Have you ever spent hours prepping an epic storyline only for your players to ignore the obvious hook and follow a random NPC instead? Or maybe they burned down a town you thought they'd save. Or maybe they made a deal with the villain just to see what would happen. These, in my opinion, aren't setbacks. They are the heart of storytelling in tabletop games. Because in the best TTRPGs, player choice doesn't just influence the story, it is the story. Whether you're running D&D, Pathfinder, or any other narrative-rich game system, empowering your players to make meaningful decisions is what transforms your campaign from a guided experience into a collaborative story. And today, we are talking about how to make your world truly come alive by designing it in a way to respond to player choices. So, with that being said, let's dive in. When a player makes a choice, they are saying, "This is my story too." As we know, tabletop RPGs aren't books or movies. They're collaborative storytelling games. They're also interactive storytelling engines that give the players the power of choice and create an emotional investment. Great campaigns are built around the decisions that the players make and not necessarily what they're supposed to do. In my Star Wars 5e game, we had a player choose to sacrifice themselves to accomplish a mission. We had another player who decided to use their force powers to heal that individual so that they didn't necessarily go out in a way that was disappointing, but rather they could kind of go in a blaze of glory and ride off into the sunset. Their choices allowed for incredible memories to be made, but it allowed the story, or at least their part of the story, to flourish in a beautiful way. Now, in my opinion, there are 4 meaningful choices that players get to make. There's a framework that I specifically use at my table, and it helps me to think about the kinds of choices that drive story. There are moral decisions, there are strategic decisions, social decisions, and then personal character choices. With moral decisions, it's very simple. Do we eliminate the cultist leader or do we try to redeem them? These moral decisions add an emotional and moral weight that often divides the party. Strategic decisions are pretty straightforward. Do we defend the village or ambush the army before it arrives? These obviously affect outcomes and future opportunities of engagement, whether it's from a narrative perspective or from a combat perspective. Then there are social decisions. Which noble house do we ally ourselves with? Do we keep this particular magic item a secret to the world? Those decisions shape relationships and long-term campaign alliances. And then lastly, there are personal character choices. Do I reveal my dark secret to the party? Do I take my vengeance out on someone? Those are the moments where character arcs really start to evolve. Each one of these choices will affect the story in a very unique and special way. More importantly, this will affect how the campaign continues. Sometimes for the better or for the good of the campaign, and sometimes not so much. But either way, these choices matter. So those 4 choices are something that's going to be meaningful to the player, and that's where we start. Those 4 choices are going to be the foundation of the player-driven story arc, and really the player-driven campaign. Now, with all that being said, How do we frame those choices to make it feel real? The illusion of choice, in my opinion, kills immersion. Real choice requires real consequences. So, what I typically like to do is help make that choice. And I like to make sure that my players have all the information available to them before they make that choice. So, number one, I present options to them that are different in both tone and method, and additionally, different in outcome. I don't necessarily like to say, oh, this is a negative choice by my tone. I say, this is what you have available to you, X, Y, Z. And these are the methods that you can obtain it. And lastly, this is the outcome. I don't really try to be biased. If I do sound biased to my players, it's for a specific reason, which is I don't want their character to go into the afterlife too soon. But from there, I don't push my players towards the quote right choice or right answer. I let them define what success looks like to them. If a player wants to sacrifice himself for the good of the party, I give them what that method would look like, what that would cause, and what that outcome would be. And then I let the players decide. And if they choose to go that route, great. If they don't choose to go that route, it's not a problem either way. They have the choice to make it. And lastly, I use the yes and or yes but instead of the no methodology. I don't like reacting negatively to bold plans. I like to respond to bold plans. And that is the difference in verbiage as well. I don't say it's a good plan or a bad plan. I say this is a bold plan or this is a not so bold plan. And that allows me to help my players make those decisions. An example that I ran into was when an archmage was speaking about teleporting the party into the castle. But the archmage wanted the party to owe them a favor. So they either had the choice to owe that archmage a favor or to go through the sewers that were guarded by something horrible. When I tell you it was a really bad homebrew monster, I mean TPK level, it was bad. The party was given the choice and was told this is what's going to happen in each way. They thought about it, they made the decision, and they went with the archmage teleporting them into the castle. Very similarly, I was playing a game and running a massive combat session for a local game store called Luck Factory Games, where the older experienced party members were in the Feywild, and they were seeing the destruction of a small town that they're from, that the party members were from, and the hag was going to give them the choice to teleport them there to assist with a giant combat. Basically, a green dragon had sent a bunch of enemy forces to the town and village, and every table, yes, I said table because there were 10 tables filled with players. So there were over 60 players playing in this epic game, and they were basically given the choice to either come and assist these lower level players or to stay in the Feywild. And those players chose to come back from the Feywild to the material plane, but they owed that hag a favor. Now, they were given a bit of a rushed choice because they saw the battle and what was happening, but the choice was still theirs. They were presented with the outcome essentially, and they made a decision. Now, obviously, I mentioned consequences, and choices mean nothing without a little bit of change. So, when a decision is made, it must echo something, right? The town remembers the players who saved them or abandoned them. There must be a positive or negative consequence. An NPC they spared shows up later in the campaign, changed by what happened, and perhaps even assists them. Or some faction they crossed becomes a recurring enemy or political force. This type of consequence or this type of reactiveness allows for the players to really understand what's important and that this is real. Even when players, quote, fail, the story should move forward with some new twist. Failure shouldn't be a wall. It should just be a branch of what's happening. Maybe they couldn't stop the villain from escaping, but now they've tracked that villain to a new region, and that villain has had time to prepare. That is a consequence that players will learn from, but it doesn't necessarily change and destroy the narrative. Now, this is the part of the episode where I like to provide tools and prompts to support your decision-making skills, and rather the decision-making skills of your players. So here are 3 things that I would like to offer. Create a player choice tracker sheet. Log key decisions and consequences over time. That is something that has helped me out. You can do it on Excel. You can do it on a PDF. There's a bunch of resources out there. You can basically create one. I also have one on Patreon if you are interested. Second, you want to create a prompt list of what ifs. Brainstorm 3 possible outcomes for any major moment and then let the players choose. Lastly, with flashbacks and interludes and things of that nature, something that I highly recommend, let the players revisit their past choices through visions and dreams and things of that nature. That allows them to see the choice they made and get a little bit of closure on it. I've done that plenty of times, and it's a fun role play session. But if you're more of an improv GM, if you feel caught off guard by that wild player choice, just take 60 seconds and ask yourself, who does this affect? Who benefits or suffers from this choice? And then what's the next domino to fall? That is really good for my improv GMs out there. It turns a tiny curveball into a huge opportunity. Remember, you don't need to prepare every outcome. You just need to be ready to follow the story your players choose to tell. Player choice isn't just a mechanic, it's a philosophy. When you respect it, reward it, and design for it, your campaign becomes something nobody could have predicted, including you. Thanks for tuning into the Bearded Nerd Podcast, your source of storytelling tools, world building wisdom, and all things tabletop. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your group. Check out the player choice tracker and narrative branching tools over on Patreon for even more ways to level up your table. And hit me up on social media to share the wildest choice your players have ever made. Much love, y'all, and keep gaming.